Hello and welcome to the TTI Distribution Download, the podcast where we talk about all things happening in the world of electronic components with the specialists of TTI. Today it's another installment of Big Ideas and Little Known Facts about connectors with John Sandy of TTI and Dan Venuto of Molex.
Thanks, Jim, and welcome everybody to the TTI and Molex podcast, Big Ideas and Little Known Facts in the world of connectors. I'm John Sandy from TTI, and I'm here with my co-host.
This is Dan Venuto. Really looking forward to a great podcast. Today we were going to be talking to Kirk Ulery, Global Product Manager in the Molex Transportation Group, to discuss connectors, product development, and the importance of TTI to their business.
So, Kirk, welcome to our podcast. And why don't we start off by telling the listeners a little bit about who Kirk Ulery is and what do you do at Molex?
Okay, thank you, John. I'm very happy to be here. Give you a little bit of background. I have a degree in mechanical engineering, and I've been in the connector industry for my entire career. I started on the computer side and did that for a while, and have been in the automotive side for the last 20 years. Worked for various connector companies within the connector industry. Spent time as a development engineer, product manager, business development, and I'm currently operating as the distribution interface for the Molex Transportation Business Unit based out of the Detroit, Michigan area.
Oh, that's great, Kurt. And I wanted to take a second to tell the audience about a story. You and I were out in Phoenix last week, and we were doing some training and meetings with distribution, but that night, we decided to go get something to eat, and we decided to test out a new fully autonomous vehicle service called Waymo. And, just from my point of view, it was one of the most impressive technological events, I think, for me personally, since I picked up the cell phone. We called this car on our iPhones. The car shows up, no driver. We open it up, get in. It drives us probably 10 or 15 minutes, no driver, from Tempe up to Scottsdale to where we were going to eat. And just looking to get your thoughts on that drive, because I know we had a lot of conversations about the technology and what the future looks like for Molex and the rest of the industry.
Yeah, like you, Dan, I was truly impressed by it. I've spent the last 8 or 10 years of my career dealing with the types of interconnects and products that make this all possible. And I think it's a great visual example of what the technology that we're working on at Molex and throughout the automotive industry is going to do for people in the future. As you and I talked during the ride, it was kind of an eerie feeling. Dan was up front, I was sitting in the back, and I kept looking at the steering wheel, which was turning, doing everything perfectly. But mentally, I'm so used to seeing a driver in the front seat. I finally convinced my brain that it was just a really short guy turning the wheel, which helped me feel better. But then as we looked at the technology in the vehicle, there were display screens for both front and rear seat passengers, and they did an excellent job of showing where we were in terms of the road, other things that were on the road. At one point, I noticed there was a little dot next to the car on my display screen, and when I looked up, it was a jogger coming by, and the car let us know they were there. So the technology that's in that is just fantastic, and it feels good to see some tangible evidence of a lot of the stuff that I've been working on for the last 10 or 15 years.
No, absolutely. And I was thinking the same thing. I think, since 2015 or 16, we've been hearing about fully autonomous. Is it going to happen? It's here. It's here in Phoenix. If you get online and look at some of these companies, there's a couple other cities out there, but, they have a pretty wide service area. And, if anybody's out there, I really recommend you try Waymo. Put a little plug in there for Waymo and Google. Great Molex customer, by the way. Excellent demonstration of kind of what the future is going to look like. There's so many applications out there. So, turning the page here, tell us a little bit about the transportation business at Molex and what makes it such a good fit for distribution.
Within Molex, our transportation group has developed a huge portfolio of products primarily for the automotive industry. We've been at this for quite some time and do close to $2 billion in sales just to the automotive side every year. And what we've done is looked at our portfolio, and we understand that the products we have a lot of applications outside of automotive. And that's where we really tie in with our distribution partners. The reach that TTI has in terms of salespeople, stocking, all the things that customers want today for quick delivery and for assistance on designing these products in really fits the bill with the TTI team. Um, the products that we're working with TTI to stock and push to our customers are all tooled, readily available, and off the shelf. And what we're trying to do is get people to think even past transportation to look at the rugged and reliable aspects of the products that we're offering. If you think about the vehicle environment, it's a very harsh environment. We have products that literally sit on a controller that's mounted directly to an engine. And those products work flawlessly for 15, 20 years, the entire life cycle of the vehicle. And then as you get into other applications, electrification is a key growth factor in throughout all of transportation and literally throughout our lives. If you think of a lot of the previous mechanical things we've dealt with, a lot of those are electric now. There's so much opportunity for the connectors and the systems that Molex and TTI are offering that I'm truly excited about the possibilities going forward.
Kirk, so as we discussed very briefly there about non-automotive opportunities and targets, could you expand upon that for the listeners and really sort of dig into some of the applications that you're looking at?
To start with transportation, it's a term I've used for years, and the simple definition I come up with is transportation to me, if it moves or floats, it's a transportation opportunity. So, anything that encompasses commercial vehicles, agriculture, e-bikes, scooters, drone systems, all those kind of things are great opportunities for our connectors. But then the next step beyond transportation encompasses things like white goods. We currently have products that we developed for automotive that we're shipping in washing machines today because the customers see the value of having this rugged and reliable system that's typically waterproof, offers you great features in terms of polarization, latching features. They're not going to come apart. And by putting that in a simple home appliance, you give such a good customer experience. The example I use, we're all familiar with washing machines, and I've had several times over my lifetime where a hose breaks in the washing machine, for example. And if the water sprays inside the washing machine and the control board, and you don't have a sealed system, you're going to end up frying the board. It's a service call. Worst case, you have to replace the washing machine. Whereas with the sealed system on that controller board, all the water does is fall off of it. The customer's happy because all they had to do was replace the hose and maybe clean up some water in the laundry room floor, but the washing machine continues to work. And because of that happy customer experience, they're going to tell their friends, and that results in more sales for the appliance manufacturer.
Continuing along the theme with our products here, we're really focused on rugged and reliable. I think you're going to hear that a lot from Molex and TTI as we progress because, one of the things I wanted to ask you, so we're designing these products typically for transportation and automotive, which is probably, probably the harshest environment, whether it's inside the engine, whether it's up in Alaska, below freezing temperatures or down near the equator, our transportation products have to work everywhere. How do you, develop these products, and then, what is the tipping point for them to be marketed or sold in other areas, whether it's a UAV or something in agriculture? Like, how do you see that process move throughout the life of the product?
Well, I think it's a great transition point. Again, is typically when we do product development, we're working directly with an OEM or with one of the direct suppliers to the OEM. In the automotive industry, and they're very specific requirements that we have to fulfill in order for the customer to accept our product. The primary driving force in North America is an organization called US CAR, which is the United States Consortium on Automotive Research. And every automotive product that we come up with meets the requirements of US CAR. And they're very specific in terms of ergonomics is key, because you think about a product that has to be mated hundreds or you think about someone at a plant who has to mate hundreds of products every single day. They're susceptible to things like carpal tunnel, repetitive stress injuries, and by designing to those requirements, we make sure that our connectors go together very easily, and then we also have specific test requirements in terms of making sure it's waterproof, mating cycles, all those kind of things. And as we develop those for automotive, we've even gone further. There's some other requirements that make it even more rugged than a typical automotive application. And that's what gets our products into more of the construction, agriculture, and marine markets. So all of those things go together to this portfolio that we're bringing into the distribution channel. And if you've got customers that are just looking for a more rugged way to build, say, a distribution box inside of an industrial building. Again, you think about how dirty it gets. I go back to, like, for those of us that are old enough, we remember the original Terminator movie. At the end of the movie, they're in this really dark factory. And all of the connections and those types of things, still need to operate in those environments. And that's the kind of the market approach we want to take as we bring these products outside the transportation industry.
So, Kirk, we've talked a little bit there about new product development. So could you give us an idea, other than the things you've already said, what really drives a new product, and how active is your group in bringing new products to market?
Well, we're very active in bringing new products to market. What we've found in an automotive and transportation, a couple of the key driving features we see, one is connectivity. People are so used to being connected that they want that same experience in the car. And for safety purposes, you want the car to handle the interface there, as opposed to driving down the road looking at your phone. That's the whole idea behind voice navigation, those types of things. Electrification is another item where, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the old mechanical systems are becoming electrified. And the real key driver today for most of the products that we're pushing initially into the distribution channel is miniaturization. The analogy I make is, if you think about it, the size of a car really hasn't changed in the 120 years that they've been around, but the electronic features have just grown exponentially. I saw a diagram of like a 1936 vehicle that had maybe 30 wires, all with ring terminals. And today, you think of a car, you can have 250 to 300 individual connectors and several miles of wire in a single vehicle. So in order to get those products and into the same size vehicle and keep that user experience, we've done a lot with miniaturization of our products. In 20 years ago, the standard terminal interface for a vehicle was a 6.3 millimeter wide terminal. They went down to 2.8 blade, which is the mini fuse, and then 1.2. And now a lot of the new products we have are a 0.5 millimeter wide terminal, and they still have to function in the same environments that all the larger connectors did in years past.
Miniaturization is driving a lot of the technology and connectors today. One other buzzword that's out there is zonal architecture. Really seems to be a hot buzzword in the world of transportation and automotive. Can you describe to the audience what that is?
Certainly. At its heart, zonal architecture is dividing the vehicle into specific zones and having an individual controller for each one of those zones. And as we get more into the autonomous vehicle systems, what we're finding is, instead of having a sensor, for example, that's on the rear bumper, to have to connect that all the way up to the head unit that's in the passenger compartment, it connects to a zone controller that's in the back of the vehicle, because it's typically a low-speed signal. It's running at kilobits as opposed to the megabits and gigabits that we're used to for Ethernet as in home systems. And the zone controllers and the automotive industry is kind of standardized on a minimum of 3 zone controllers in a vehicle, and those controllers are all networked through a backbone of high-speed Ethernet. So instead of having every system on the car into a high-speed system, your lower speed systems connect to the zone controller, and the zone controllers communicate with each other. And the key things there is, one, it reduces the complexity of your wiring and allows you to use low speed wiring. And the other thing is the zone controllers are completely redundant for each other. From a safe back to our autonomous ride, if one of those zone controllers in the vehicle had gone out, the other controllers would have the ability to take over for enough period of time to get both of us to a safe spot to stop the vehicle. You certainly don't want your vehicle having to reboot while you're driving down the highway at 65 or 70 miles an hour.
And how is Molex answering the call for product development to help engineers design to this new zonal architecture?
Well, we're developing a significant number of products around high speed. The 2 primary wiring systems in vehicles today for high speed are coax and what we call twisted pair Ethernet. There's a commercial version, I think it's SPE, which is single pair Ethernet. And the IEEE developed a system where instead of having 2 pairs, which is what your home Ethernet operates on, there's 1 pair that transmits and ones that receive. They're able to transmit and receive over a single pair, which gives you reduced complexity, lower weight, which is always critical in vehicle applications, and a smaller bundle in order to pass these signals through. So the single pair Ethernet is what we're working on for the backbone of the zonal architecture, and other areas that do need a high-speed interface for things like a LiDAR unit or individual radar units. The other piece of that is the coax, which is primarily used for digital cameras in vehicles today. The beauty of the coax cable is it has enough bandwidth that you can carry 2 different signals. And the way most digital cameras in vehicles work today is you have a high speed signal, which carries the video piece of it. And then there's a lower signal that actually has a current component to it. And that's what powers the camera. So instead of having to plug a video line in and then power and ground, which is what you'd see in a traditional analog camera, a single coax can both power the camera and get the video signal out. And putting a lot of development effort into those systems. And then the next iteration is what we're calling our MX Dash, which is a data signal hybrid connector. This is kind of a preview of coming attractions. The Dash system is one it's literally in development as we speak. And what we're doing there is combining the high-speed connectors and cables with traditional signal lines. And the example I like to use for that is if you think about your typical driver's door in a vehicle, you've got all the window controls for the vehicle, you've got the mirror controls, some other things, and then with a surround camera system, there's also some coax going to the camera that's mounted on the external mirror. And in some instances, automakers are putting antennas in those mirrors, more from a styling decision instead of having a shark fin on the roof. And we're able to fit all of those connectors or all of those terminals and signals in a single housing. So it's a single point connection, which significantly speeds up the assembly time in a vehicle plant.
That's fascinating, Kirk. I must admit, it's very interesting to see where the technology and the products are going on the automotive and the transportation side. It bodes very well for the future, and obviously for a lot of new product development coming soon. Can I take us back and just talk about the relationship that TTI has with TSBU, and what is it about the TTI that makes that so special?
Molex has had a long relationship with the TTI TSBU. From a matter of personal interest, I actually worked in the TSBU for a little bit, and have known the people. And I'm very excited about the opportunity to work with your group again, because you guys have such a knowledge of the industry. What TTI brings to Molex is that customer-facing piece of it with technically competent people who are able to do the legwork and identify the customers and the opportunities where we can both grow our business together. And to me, that's the key point of this relationship. It's mutually beneficial. We've got the products, we've got them on the shelf, and again, they're tooled in high volumes, so it gives you a relatively good cost position. And what TTI brings is that customer-facing piece of it, and a great relationship with honestly, some really nice people. And, we have a lot of fun together. And I'm really excited about the growth potential with Molex and TTI together.
No, thanks. I appreciate that. So if I'm talking now about our joint customers, ultimately, how do they benefit from that relationship?
Well, again, the customer has a person that they contact regularly. I mentioned with the distribution channel, you guys are literally throughout the country, throughout the world, talking to customers on a regular basis. And for Molex to duplicate that sales force, we would literally have to hire thousands of people to do that. You guys know the customers literally like the back of your hand, and are able to understand what their requirements are. When at Molex, when we deal with an automotive customer, we know when specifically as an example, if we go to GM, we know exactly what documentation is required, what hoops we have to jump through to get our products qualified. And that's what you guys know with your customers. You've got customers that you've been dealing with for 10, 20, 30 years, and understand that when they want a new product, here are the things that are important to them. And you can take care of that interface for us and say, I've got a customer that has this type of requirement. And from a Molex standpoint, I can come in and say, well, here are the 2 or 3 connectors. Between us, we identify that. And you can look at a connector and say, well, my customer doesn't like this one because of these things that we've seen in the past. And I think that helps us give a much better solution to the customer. Instead of coming in and just opening up a portfolio and saying, here, what do you want? We come in with a targeted approach of 2 or 3 options to help solve whatever issues they have.
TTI is a great partner, and for our audience doesn't know, they have a specific transportation group that is laser focused on this market and this customer and servicing them, as well as bringing Molex's new technology to those customers. But as we progress forward in the year 2023 and we move into 2024, how do you see the market developing for transportation connectors?
What I see in the industry is, I think, a somewhat of a caution growth period for the rest of this year and into next year. There are a lot of external factors that are impacting us, but the pace of development and growth is just fantastic within the transportation industry. And I'm really excited about the potential going forward. From a business standpoint, there's some headwinds on a global basis. We're all aware of the political situation, with Russia and the Ukraine, has had some impact on that region. But generally, I think we're looking at some decent growth compared to some other industries this year.
And I think coming back to our ride out in Phoenix in the Waymo vehicle, I mean, one of the things we were looking at is just how much cabling and connector content that is in these vehicles with this many sensors, with this much technology, displays, etc., cameras, LiDAR. So how do you see that impacting the industry? I mean, it's almost to the point where, a vehicle designer is going to have to start thinking of their connections and their cabling top of mind before they go into anything else.
Exactly. I've been in the connector industry for a long time, and the joke I've always used is the connector is the last thing people think about. And the analogy there is that if you look on a circuit board, there's no symbol for a connector. You've got resistors, capacitors, but when you look at a schematic, they bring a line to the edge of the board, and they put a J there and say jumper, and figure out a connector. But as the connectors and the cables become an integral part of the high-speed data that has to go between them, you're right, it is more and more, they're going to have to look at the connections and the cabling systems as they design them. And that's where a company like Molex, I think, is in a great position, because we also have a strong portfolio of what are traditionally non-automotive products, and we're seeing a lot of those in vehicles. You mentioned the displays, the internal systems, and a lot of the products that we've got, say, in an iPhone today, we're also in that Waymo in terms of connecting the display and the processors that are required for internal systems. So that's why I'm very excited about the potential with Molex and TTI for the electrification going forward by being able to offer that complete portfolio of products, from a miniaturization standpoint, from a high-speed standpoint, and all the other rugged and reliable capabilities that we have. I think it's a fantastic potential for Molex and TTI to grow business. And the key to growing that business is being able to help our customers solve those problems.
Yeah, Kirk, great stuff. Really interesting where the market's going. Very interested in where we are today, but I think the future just holds so many possibilities with so many new technologies. And I think that's a great place to wrap this up. So that was Kirk Ulery from Molex. Kirk, thanks very much for joining Dan and I on today's podcast, and we really appreciate the time you spent with us.
Yes, thank you, Kurt.
All right, thank you. I've really enjoyed it, and thank you guys. Appreciate the probing questions, and I look forward to again the great potential of growth between our two companies.
That's it for this episode of the TTI Distribution Download. For more information on any of the topics you heard about today, reach out to your nearby TTI branch at 1-800-CALL-TTI or visit us online at tti.com.